And then we are going to check in with Fran Duffy, who kicks ass and take names when it comes to the NFL draft. It's a great time to sign up to be a diehard, which I'll tell you about in a minute, especially during draft season, because you will have access to Fran's guide, rankings, scouting reports, all of the things. He's got a helmet in the background that just says draft. That's a hell of a team to be on. I'm on team draft.
Team draft.
Hey, Fran Duffy.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
We're good.
We're chilling.
Is that a hoodie or is that a jacket over a shirt?
It is a hoodie. Got my
right.
the PHLY hoodie. We do have a shirt underneath. It's a little breezy outside today. Outside, so we need the multiple layers.
It's
Yes.
not raw dogging. That's good.
No. Fran's team. No, he knows. He knows what the deal is. Even if he does, he knows when he comes on this show.
Yeah.
We don't allow it.
Fran, earlier in the show, I can't come up with a word for it, so I'll just skip all of that. I was looking at what Chicago has done on the offensive line, and I've announced to the world that the Cowboys can no longer have Ashton Jeanty because it looks like the Bears, after building that offensive line, in my brain, it makes sense to plug behind rookie contract quarterback, revamped offensive line, go get the horse. Do you think that I'm crazy for saying that Ashton Jeanty is out and we can't have him?
I don't think you're crazy for saying that the Cowboys are out, but I'm doing my mock draft right now. I'm doing my post-combine mock draft. It's going to be a 3-rounder that'll be up on DLLS here this week, over the next couple days. I've got Ashton Jeanty going off the board before the Chicago Bears pick at 10.
Is it the Raiders?
It is going to be the Raiders. I personally don't love that, but what I can't get out of my head is listening to the introductory press conference with Pete Carroll and John Spytek, the new general manager, and Pete Carroll saying that, everywhere I've been, it was we built it up and it took us a few years to get there. He's like, that is not what we're doing here. We are going to hit the ground running and we're going to build this thing to win right now. He's the oldest coach in the NFL. Pretty sure he's being hired as the oldest NFL coach in league history.
I forgot he got hired.
He's not there for a 5-year rebuild. He's there to try and get going. So my guess is that Ashton Jeanty, as we sit here right now, he makes the most sense for them at pick number 6.
Oh, Pete's there for a good time, not a long time.
I mean, he looks young though. That chewing gum burns calories. I think Pete's in a good place.
Yeah. Fran, talking about your post-draft mock-up, give me 2 guys who went into the draft went into the combine kind of like, came out of the combine with a whole new set of eyes on them, looking at them and saying, these guys really helped themselves and moved themselves up the draft board, made themselves some money.
Yeah, for me, Jesse, the combine is all about expectations, right? We talked about that when I was out there last week, that it depends on what your thought was of a player going in, and that might change the lens with which you focus on him coming out. For me, Nick Emanwari, the safety from South Carolina, he was a top 15 player for me going into the week. Was not that case for most people, but I think after watching the big safety from South Carolina test, everyone's like, oh, like that guy's, he's pretty athletic, huh? The guy is a freak show athlete, a guy that can do anything that you need at the safety spot in today's NFL. I do think he's the modern strong safety, and that he can match up against tight ends, he can play deep, he can play down close to the line, do everything that you need at that spot. Would not shock me if he's the first safety off the board. But honestly, I have him and Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia. Both those guys are top 15 players for me. So I think when you look at those two in this class, I think people now are kind of catching up to what Emanwari is here in the structure of this entire group.
Fran, when you're putting your draft board together, give me a percentage of what you see on tape compared to what you see as far as at the draft and at the pro days. Like, how do you kind of put that together to make your professional opinion on a certain player? How much is tape and how much is the combine type numbers?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like the athletic testing numbers, all of that can serve as, I don't want to say like a tiebreaker, because that might be even just making it like too granular. But that's a way to kind of separate players that are close together, right? And I think that when you're trying to determine what the athletic upside is of any given player, I'll be doing my first big board for the site here in a couple weeks, and when I do that, I'll kind of go through how it is that I tier players personally, and it is very connected to how I project a player going to the league and how that player, that role, gets paid in the NFL in the pro market, right? And so if I believe that, a safety is a third safety in the league, and I think he's a third safety, comes on and sub, maybe he's a big nickel player, right? Like you think of what Malik Hooker was when he first got to Dallas, right? So he comes off all right, he got paid, I want to say like it was like in the $2.5-3 million range. If that's the way that I peg this player, we'll say he's a safety from Montana. All right, I peg him as this kind of player. Well, that's going to determine what that bucket is, right? And now if I've got 6 players in this bucket, maybe that's where the athletic testing comes into play, and that can help separate the guys that are within that same bucket, if that makes any sense, Jesse. So yeah, it is definitely a portion, but for me, the film is always king, and that is going to dominate what I see and how I project these players going to the NFL. And I always bake that stuff in, right? Like I expected Nick Evanwari to test well. The test numbers that were being reported about him were freak show test numbers. So I already had him high based off of that, knowing like what the athletic upside was there.
Don't count it twice.
Like a small portion, but it's part of it.
That's the don't count it twice rule. Like
exactly.
If you knew somebody was fast and he runs fast, he doesn't move up. You already wrote it down. You already had it.
And it works the other way too, right? Where it's like, all right, like I'm not expecting this guy to test well. So if he doesn't test well, I'm not going to knock him for that either, right? And so it works both ways.
So I want to go back to, because you mentioned the South Carolina safety who had a great combine, and I think most people expected him to. And yep. I want to tie that into a couple of different guys. And how do people's draft stock get affected when we thought a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, that the corner at Michigan, Will Johnson, the safety at Georgia, Malachi Starks, before college football was even played this past season, those guys were top 5 prospects. Then the season happens, and whether it is tape and then injury and other guys show up and have better seasons on the football field, how much are guys able to retain the fact that as 19 and 20-year-olds, the whole world could see, oh, wow, that's a dude. And then we're now a year down the road. How much can a guy like Malachi Starks, who didn't have a great combine, or a guy like Will Johnson, whose tape to me was but he's still the human and the prototype that you've seen play great football, how much are they able to hold that stock, or how much is it able to slip?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's, to me, like one of the things that I find to be the most fascinating about the team building process, the player selection process, when you're talking about talent acquisition, all of those like preconceived biases absolutely can anchor where a player starts in terms of the evaluation, right? And so you may have, and this is for everybody. This is for a general manager. This is for an area scout. This is for a position coach. This is for us on the outside, right? Like all of those preconceived biases can creep into the evaluation and into the projection. And so it's up to each individual in terms of how much that is going to anchor you and hold you to that spot. Me personally, when I'm looking at guys, I want to take the whole body of work. And so, yes, the recency bias can come into effect, but then also you don't want to forget, like, hey, like Will Johnson. Some people had Will Johnson as a top 5 player, to your point. The corner from Michigan had him as a top 5 player. I was a little down on him coming into the season compared to consensus. I didn't have him quite as high as everybody else. The run defense issues that people pointed to this year, to me, I saw that last year on film as well when they went on that national title run.
Will Johnson's tackling technique is to try to cut block the guy with the ball.
Yeah, which typically does not go great once you get to the NFL. It was a hit or miss proposition for him when he was in the Big Ten. Once you get to the league, that typically doesn't go well. And I know that it's like, hey, we pay these guys to cover. in today's league with like the RPOs and the bubble screens, you need those guys to be able to tackle, or else the offenses are targeting them. Time that's part of the game plan going in. So I do think that is something that I certainly value. But yeah, now people are pointing to that, and especially given the fact that it was an injury-shortened season for him. There's been a lot of like whisper, like, could he have come back? Did he only not come back just because the season wasn't going well for Michigan? All that stuff, kind of in the background. But to me, like, you always want to take everything into the Quinn Ewers is a great example, but you have to bring all of this. It's all a part of the puzzle, and that's why the whole like scouting and talent evaluation projection, it's an art, not a science.
Fran, when you're putting, like, this is like a personal question as you're going through all of this, right? Like, and
manscaping.
Well, wait,
you said personal.
Yeah, this is like his personal thought process on how he builds out his board.
Exactly.
Because do you hear and see what other people are saying, and does that influence you, or are you kind of like, I'm locked in, I got my blinders on, this is my approach, this is the way I do it, this is how I evaluate, and I'm not moved either way by what I may see elsewhere or hear elsewhere. I'm strictly sticking to my guidelines.
Yeah, I'm very much in the latter, portion where I am going to focus in on like this. This is what I deem important. This is what, to me too, Jesse, like, as much as like this is my first time kind of where I'm going to be full time into the NFL draft, but I will always make it a point to be watching NFL tape throughout the fall, because to me, it's not just, like I'm watching college and who are the best guys on tape, but it's also like having a full understanding of what is it that plays in the league, and not just, here are the top 5 guys that had sacks last year. Let me watch all the guys, let me watch Nick Bosa and Micah Parsons and Donnell Hunter and all these guys. But what does a third defensive end look like in the NFL? What does a fifth corner look like in the NFL? Having that full understanding is really important. It sets that rubric for myself, which again, I'll kind of explain further once my big board comes out in a couple of weeks. But I have to keep the blinders on and stay true to myself. I've been doing this now for 15 years, writing reports on players. And so often there would be guys where I'm like, man, like I know like everybody else is saying this about a player, but I just don't see it, or I see this. And then it comes to, and I've been, not to say that I'm right every single time, you know what I'm saying, where there would be times where, man, I was higher on this player than everybody else had him, but I just didn't quite trust myself, and I would have had him up here, right? And so, those are the things that you kind of learn from early on. And again, you're not going to bat 1,000. That's just the nature of this. But to me, it is so important to give your 100%. I mean, look, people are paying to be diehards because they don't want to see consensus rankings. Maybe they do, but honestly, like if I'm paying my money to get somebody's opinion, I want their opinion, not everybody else's opinion. And so for me, I will always stay true to that. You won't catch me like sticking with groupthink and saying like, Dane and DJ and Mel Kiper, like they have this guy as a number 3 defensive tackle, so I got to put him up there too. That's not going to be the way that I ever operate.
This is the least confident I've ever been putting a wide receiver class in order ever.
Yep.
And with the Cowboys picking at 12, honestly, there's not a guy that I love to take with that pick. And understand that I'm a receiver guy. I played receiver and I was this close to the NFL. I was that close to the NFL, so I know what I'm saying.
You were all over CeeDee Lamb.
Dude, my dog is named CeeDee. I was restarting simulators that year that let CeeDee get to 17. I was like, that's dumb. He's the best receiver in the draft. There's no chance. And then I had a party when they drafted him. So I got one right. But so like Tetairoa McMillan is that's to a lot of people.
That Sky Moore pick.
The Sky Moore wasn't great. Neither was Laquan Treadwell. You got to own your stuff. I didn't know Laquan Treadwell had to be told what to do on every play, and that's why he lined up on his own sideline in college for every snap. But like Tetairoa McMillan's not testing while other guys did. When I already had some reservations about him, like I'm looking at 12. I want to compliment to CeeDee Lamb, and I don't love any of the options. Are there guys that you are comfortable and confident saying at 12 wide receiver that you would think that's a good pick?
In my first mock draft in January, as soon as we got into the meat of the playoffs, I mocked them Luther Burden. He was my wide receiver 1 coming into the year, and he has been. And Jesse, this goes perfectly with your last question. he has been progressively dropping down a lot of analyst boards and dropping out of the first round altogether. And I'm going to be honest, like when I talk with people that have evaluated his tape from this year, I know the production has gone down, and I've done some of the tape. I haven't gone through every single target. So that'll be something that I'm doing here in the coming days and weeks. But I think when you go through Luther Burden, like, I just see a guy that can not only take the top off and be a vertical threat down the field, but he's so explosive after the catch. He's a violent player, fearless over the middle of the field. Doesn't put the ball on the ground. I watched his workout last week. Every single snap of the workouts last week, and I thought he had one of the best positional workouts of any of the receivers. He tested well. Checked all those boxes. So when I see other guys in the industry that are dropping him down, I started texting people, and it's like, all right, well, are you hearing anything? Is there something behind the scenes that I'm missing, right? Because that's obviously important to what you just said about Treadwell, right? It's like, all right, like you want to be able to have that full picture. But on film, to me, like Luther Burden is a great player to pair with CeeDee Lamb because he's got that ability to line up inside or outside. He can be used vertically. He can be used underneath. So however you want to use CeeDee, well, now you've got Burden to kind of complement that. T-Mac is an interesting one just because of the size, and people are going to question what the athleticism ultimately is. He's so strong through contact, which is something that I do value at the position. I do think that he made strides as a route runner this year, but the athleticism is always going to be a question. He was a guy I compared to Cortland Sutton, who is, I mean, look, Cortland Sutton's a damn good receiver, right? And, some people have called him like a Diet Coke version of Drake London. I actually like him a little more than I liked Drake London coming out of USC. So, I'm probably lower than what the consensus is on T-Mac, but I'm not a complete hater of his game either. At 12 overall, it might be a little rich.
Fran, you're a beast. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week.
We all silly like the mayor.